Welcome to the debate. Today, we are stepping a little bit off the beaten path of consumer electronics reviews and, hot takes. We're looking at a piece of technology that is frustratingly difficult to categorize, and I think that is exactly why we need to talk about it. We are discussing Misha, an instrument created by Eventide and the inventor Leon Gruenbaum. Now, if you look at a picture of it, you might think it's just another Eurorack sequencer or, a fancy MIDI controller, but that is a fundamental misunderstanding. Misha is an instrumented system for thinking melodically in real time. It is a device where pitch is relative, not absolute. And because of that, it poses a fascinating question about the future of musical practice.
It certainly does. And to put a fine point on it, the question is whether an instrument that is intentionally, slow, abstract, and opaque can actually survive in a world that demands immediate fluency. We're looking at a system that requires what the source material calls time in system. And frankly, I'm skeptical. The central tension here is, how can we move Misha forward? Is this instrument destined to evolve into a widely adopted tool, or is it simply, as Leon Gruenbaum himself fears, a bread maker in the cupboard?
I love that analogy, even though I completely disagree with the conclusion.
It's a great analogy. It's that kitchen gadget you buy with the best intentions, you use it twice, it makes a mess, it takes 3 hours to bake a loaf, and eventually you shove it in the back of the cupboard and go back to buying sliced bread. I worry Misha is the musical equivalent of that.
I think that fear is only valid if you view Misha through the lens of a mass-market consumer product. If you judge a violin by how quickly a beginner can make a pleasant sound, the violin is a failure. I'm here to represent the view that Misha's future lies in stewardship and embodiment. We're going to look closely at the work of Henry Schroy, a stakeholder who treats Misha not as a gadget, but as a discipline akin to jazz or ritual music. My argument is that by treating this instrument with rigorous documentation and what Henry calls context engineering, we can secure a future for it that is deep rather than wide. The future of Misha isn't in sales figures, it's in the preservation of a new way of thinking.
And I'm here to represent the reality of the ecosystem. I see the intellectual beauty in what Henry and Leon are doing. I really do. But I argue that the awkward middle ground Misha occupies makes it incredibly fragile. You have a tool that fights the user. So I'm questioning whether a private practice stored in Excel spreadsheets and, private markdown files, no matter how AI-assisted, can truly sustain an instrument without broader adoption or immediate clarity. If we want to move Misha forward, we have to ask if the current path is actually leading anywhere other than a very sophisticated dead end.
Well, let's find out. I want to start with my position statement. And I want to ground it immediately in the concept of Misha-matics. This is the term Henry Schroy uses to describe his practice. If you look at the working mind dump document we have, Henry makes a critical distinction. Misha is not a module. It's an instrument that replaces note selection with gesture, constraint, and memory.
Okay, but before you go further, we really need to clarify what relative pitch actually means for the listeners, because it sounds like academic jargon, but it's the physical reality of the machine.
Right. Good point. On a piano, if you press the white key in the middle, it's a C. It is always a C. That's absolute pitch. On Misha, you have buttons that say things like +1 or -2 or +4. If you press +1, the note goes up one step in the scale. If you press it again, it goes up another step. If you press -3, it jumps down 3 steps. The note that comes out depends entirely on where you were a second ago. You aren't playing notes, you are playing the distance between notes.
Which means you can't just memorize a melody by position. You have to calculate the intervals in real time.
It's care. In its profile, he notes that during periods of low energy, the fixed system of Misha provides a support structure. You aren't trying to be novel, you're trying to inhabit a system. And crucially, and this is the part I want to focus on, Henry is using AI-assisted workflows and context engineering to amplify his human judgment.
We'll get to the AI part because I definitely have thoughts on that.
But the point is, this isn't about automation. It's about preserving the musical reasoning that usually gets lost when we just, noodle around on a synth.
I see why you think that creates a path forward, But let me give you a different perspective. I've looked at the same mind dump document, and Henry is very honest about the instrument's flaws. He says Misha withholds clarity and does not advertise its payoff. In a modern context, that is a death sentence for a piece of hardware. Misha doesn't generate music on its own, it doesn't store intention like a traditional sequencer, and it doesn't optimize for ease.
But that difficulty is the feature, not the bug.
Is it? Or is it a barrier that prevents the community from growing? My argument is based on accessibility and viability. You are relying on long-form practitioners like Henry Schroy's to keep this alive. But look at Henry's background. He's a technical lead in financial systems, he has a degree in physics and circuit design, and he has a background in Afro-Brazilian ritual music with the Candomblé Orchestra. He is a unicorn. Relying on someone with that specific intersection of skills to prove the instrument's worth is not a scalable strategy.
You don't need 1,000 Henrys. You just need a pathway for others to follow.
But the pathway he suggests involves learning the melody back on a bass guitar. If the requirement for understanding the system is being a virtuoso bassist with a physics degree, you're asking way too much of the user. That isn't a future, that's a hermitage.
I think you're mistaking mass adoption for survival. But let's dig into the core debate. I want to talk about the nature of the instrument itself, this idea of gesture versus module.
Let's do it.
Leon Gruenbaum, the inventor, he's very clear in his stakeholder profile. He views Misha as a gesture-based instrument. The lineage here goes back to his Sam Shillian controller. My position here is that the future depends on users treating it like a horn or a drum. You play it in time. The new ritual website text explicitly states that this work is about how sound, structure, and attention unfold over time. If you treat it as a module, something you just patch and forget, you miss the point entirely.
I agree, that is the vision, but the market reality views it as a module. It's sold in the Eurorack format. It sits in a rack next to oscillators and filters. The mind dump identifies this risk explicitly. It says users patch it in, trigger it briefly, and move on. Why? Because as the text says, expressiveness arrives after constraint is internalized. That creates a plateau. You have to put in weeks of work before it sounds good. Most users today, especially in the modular synthesis world, are looking for generative happy accidents. They want the machine to do the work. Misha demands you do the work.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. The source material mentions Kitschillian, the educational version of the Samschillian. It was designed to teach this concept of relativity to children. If a child can grasp the concept of relative pitch, surely a dedicated electronic musician can. The barrier isn't intellect. The barrier is the willingness to accept slowness.
Even with Kitschillian, the dissenter in me notes that you are asking someone to fundamentally rewire how they listen. You're asking them to disconnect their finger from a specific frequency. That is a massive cognitive load. And this brings me to the ecology of the people keeping this alive. You have this triad, Leon, Steve, and Henry.
Exactly. And I argue this ecology is the model for the instrument's future. You have 3 distinct roles that we need to replicate to move Misha forward. You have Leon Gruenbaum, the philosopher and originator. He prioritizes musical legibility over user experience. Then you have Steve DeFuria. The profile describes him as the cartographer.
The man who maps the unmappable.
He maps the scale universe, the AIM scales, the 12 EDO systems. He ensures completeness and correctness as care. And then you have Henry, the proof-of-life practitioner, who actually inhabits the system. This triad covers invention, theory, and practice.
But that triad is incredibly unstable. That's my point. Look at the dependency there. The profile on Steve DeFuria notes that he provides the trust anchor. His NAMM 2022 demo was successful because he was calm and methodical. He made the complex feel usable. But the dissenter asks, if Steve hadn't spent hundreds of hours mapping the edge cases of those scales, Henry wouldn't have the raw material to practice with. If Henry didn't commit to daily practice to stress test Leon's ideas would just remain theoretical. You are describing a delicate balance of 3 highly specific individuals. If one of them walks away, does the instrument just collapse?
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it assumes these roles can't be institutionalized or taught. And this is where we get to the most important part of our discussion, the Misha-matics research corpus and the role of AI. This is how we move Misha forward. It addresses your concern about the unicorn. We don't need unicorns if we have a robust system of documentation.
Okay, so this is the AI-assisted forum concept. Tell me how a spreadsheet saves an instrument.
It is so much more than a spreadsheet. Henry is logging date, scale, tuning, mostly 12 EDO, some Boland-Pierce experiments, and the resulting notes. He's creating instrument memory. But here is the key. Henry mentions in his profile that he uses context engineering and AI-assisted workflows. He isn't using AI to generate the music. He's using AI to create a form for reflection.
Elaborate on that, because when I hear AI in music, I usually think of someone typing, "Make me a lo-fi beat" into a prompt.
This is the opposite. The AI analyzes the corpus of Henry's own playing. It acts as a mirror. The source text says the AI helps improve reasoning and documentation quality. For example, the AI might help him recognize that he creates mid-density scales, 6 to 8 notes, more often than others. Or it might point out, hey, every time you use this specific scale, you tend to avoid the +4 interval. It helps him see patterns in his own playing that he might miss. This turns a solitary practice into a dialogue. The AI becomes the other in the room, helping to steward the practice.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that entirely. I mean, I see the utility for Henry. It's a cool productivity hack. But calling it an AI-assisted forum feels like a stretch if it's just one guy in a large language model looking at an Excel file. A forum implies community. It implies friction with other human beings. The source material asks, how might shared practices help such instruments persist? I am not sure a private research-oriented record is inviting enough to build that community.
But you're missing the potential for scalability here. Henry is building the prototype for the forum. Imagine if every Misha user uploaded their logs to a shared repository. The AI could then say, oh, you're struggling with the Bowman-Pierce scale? Henry solved that problem 2 years ago using this fingering technique. By using AI to structure and query this data, Henry is creating a blueprint. He's showing us that you don't need a band to have a rigorous critique of your work. You can use these tools to enforce constraint as care.
That is actually a more compelling vision. Using AI as a connective tissue between isolated practitioners, but I still have reservations about the entry cost.
What cost?
The friction, the sheer effort. Henry's process involves recording the Misha outlet and then, this is the part that blows my mind, learning the melody back on an electric bass.
Yes, that is the embodiment aspect. This is the crucial step to moving the instrument forward.
It's beautiful, I don't deny that. The source text says this closes the loop between abstraction and embodiment. It connects to his work with Salif Keita and the Candomblé Orchestra, this idea of rigorous, ritualistic discipline. But for the average electronic musician, or even the advanced one, that is pure friction. It is taking something digital, which is supposed to be fast and fluid, and forcing it through the clumsy mechanism of human muscle memory. Why would anyone do that when they can just quantize the MIDI notes in a computer?
Because the friction protects the musical meaning. That is my core stance here. Henry explicitly notes that constraint is not aesthetic severity, but a support structure. If you just let the machine play, you aren't making music, you're auditing electricity. By forcing himself to learn the melody on bass, he validates whether the interval logic actually sings. If it's unplayable on bass, maybe it wasn't a good melody. That is how you move the instrument forward, by proving it can exist in the physical world.
I just come at it from a different way. I think you're describing a high art conceptual project, not the future of a hardware product. Leon Gruenbaum worries about the breadmaker in the cupboard. If the requirement for success is to treat the instrument with the devotion of a monk, it will remain in the cupboard for 99% of users. The ecology you described, Leon, Steve, Henry, it's fascinating, but it feels like a closed loop. Steve maps it, Henry plays it, Leon dreams it. Where's the door for the rest of us?
The door is the documentation. The door is the new ritual website. The source text describes the website as a working map, an invitation to listen, read, and return. It's not a marketing site, it's an archive. By publishing the Misha-matics corpus, by showing the plateaus of learning, they are being honest with the user. They aren't selling a quick fix, they are selling a practice.
Honesty is great, but does it sell units? Does it keep the firmware updates coming?
It keeps the idea alive.
Leon values long memory. He is less interested in product lifecycle and more interested in instrument lineage. Even if Misha as a hardware unit disappears, the concept of relative interval performance needs to survive. And it survives through this deep, data-rich stewardship. The AI-assisted forum we talked about isn't just for Misha users. It's a model for anyone trying to learn a difficult skill in the digital age.
I will concede that the context engineering aspect is novel. Using AI to interrogate your own practice is a fascinating use case. Henry isn't asking ChatGPT to write a song, he's asking it, what did I do today, and how does it relate to what I did last month? That is valuable. It creates a continuity that our fragmented digital lives usually lack.
Exactly. It creates a feedback loop that sustains the player during those plateaus you mentioned. When you feel like you aren't making progress, the data proves you are accumulating instrument memory.
But I still worry that without a Steve DeForia figure to constantly map the new territories and make them safe for the average user, the system becomes too wild. The mind dump says Misha involves real-time risk. Repetition is never guaranteed. If I press +3, I might land on a note that sounds terrible because of the key I'm in. That is terrifying for a performer.
It is terrifying, but it's also where the life is. As Henry says, the instrument resists autopilot. It demands you are present.
It certainly does that. You can't drift off.
And that brings us to the future. The question we started with was, how do we move Misha forward?
And my answer remains cautious. I think the current path is noble, but narrow. The reliance on a private, evolving corpus and a living dataset kept in an Excel file suggests a fragility. It relies on the extraordinary commitment of individuals. If we want Misha to be an AI-assisted form, that form needs to be public. It needs to be accessible. It can't just be Henry chatting with his database. We need to see other people failing and succeeding with it.
And I disagree. I think the depths of Henry's practice is the proof of concept. The future isn't about thousands of people playing Misha poorly. It's about a small group playing it with profound understanding. The AI-assisted forum is the methodology itself, using technology to deepen human reasoning. Henry serves as the archetype. He shows us that if you treat the instrument with devotion, it yields results that a sequencer never could.
We're at a crossroads in how we view musical technology. Is it a tool for efficiency or a partner in thought?
It is an instrumented system for thinking, and thinking is hard work.
That sounds great on a website, but it's hard to sell at a music store. Buy this, it makes thinking harder.
Perhaps it doesn't belong at a standard music store. Perhaps, as the source text suggests, it belongs to a class of instruments that wait for the few players willing to reorganize how they listen.
A breadmaker for the musical soul, then?
A ritual object for the digital age.
We've covered a lot of ground. To summarize my position, Misha is a brilliant, intellectual achievement that risks obscurity because it demands too much friction from the user. While the ecology of Leon, Steve, and Henry is a fascinating case study in collaboration, I believe that without broader accessibility and a clearer payoff, the instrument remains fragile. The reliance on private data structures and unique personal histories creates a barrier to entry that is just hard to overcome.
And I maintain that the future of Misha lies precisely in that friction. By embracing stewardship and using tools like the Misha-matics research corpus and AI-assisted context engineering, practitioners like Henry Schroy are building a foundation that is stronger than any marketing campaign. They are preserving musical memory and showing us that constraint is a form of care. The future isn't about mass adoption, it's about the preservation of a new way of thinking melodically. And we leave with you. Are you looking for a tool that makes it easy? Or are you willing to stay with an instrument that withholds clarity in exchange for something deeper?
That is up to you to decide.
Thank you for joining the debate.